Darn, you missed the perfect Black Friday gift. That's what you're thinking, right? I mean, there's that person that's always hard to buy for. What do you get them? What's a gift that lasts? I will tell you right now. On sale for $17.79, the paperback version of Climate Cult. Just go to Amazon.com, $17.79. You can get the hardcover for $30, the Kindle for $9.99, or the audiobook, which, by the way, I voice. It's my voice on the audiobook. And I will just tell you this, for those of you who have listened to the audiobook, this is no surprise to you. But to those of you who have not, I read the book, and in the very last chapter, as I'm reading the afterword, which is just, it's kind of like bringing everything together for a big close. And as I'm reading this, I'm thinking about all of the many months that I labored at. It was a labor of love, but just worked hard to put this book together. And really all of the years of research that went into it and all the experience from my life in corporate media to being a radio talk show host, it all came together at that moment. And I'm so passionate about this country. And of course, I wrote this before the election, so I was hopeful that we would see a victory. So as I'm reading the very last part of the book, I mean, I literally break down. And we just kept recording. And when it was all said and done, I told the editor, you can take out all the moments where I choke up. You can remove the moments where I'm literally weeping. Or you can keep them. It's up to you. So there were a few long pauses that they left out as I stopped to blow my nose because the tears were flowing, but they kept some of it in. And I think you're going to appreciate the passion, because I, just like you, I'm passionate for this country, and I'm so grateful to God that He has given America another chance. And now I'm praying that, one, on the political side, we don't blow it. And two, I'm praying on the spiritual side that we take advantage of the opportunity to tell people the good news of Jesus Christ. For He is the way, He is the truth, He is the life. Okay, enough of my sermon. Buy the book, Climate Cult. And I'm sure when you go to see Climate Cult at Amazon or Barnes & Noble, they'll probably also pop up my other books, which, by the way, remain great reads. Climategate has sold an unbelievable amount of copies over the years. And it was the book that kind of opened up the genre to a new level in terms of books that were talking about the climate hoax. And that became a bona fide bestseller back in 2010. And there were some great stories and anecdotes in it and a lot of fantastic information that I did not include in Climate Cult. And then Eco-Tyranny is really on another level altogether, because I'm talking about some of the crazy, wild, horrendous, unbelievable things that the Democrat Party and their whacked out international liberal cohorts have done in this country to get public land off the table and to just try kill the farming industry at large, as well as the ranching industry. So that's a book called Eco-Tyranny, How the Left's Green Agenda Will Dismantle America. I'm recording this on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, Friday afternoon on the West Coast, although I'm not actually on the West Coast, but I'm kind of near. I'm in one of those states nearby, although behind me, of course, that's where I did most of my media career in San Francisco. But I'm not in the state of California right now, I can tell you that. I've said adios to my home state. But what state is he living in? Well, that's for you to find out. But in the meantime, I want to talk about some things regarding Thanksgiving that may not have been brought up yesterday at the dinner table. Now, I brought these things up at my house. I brought them up on Wednesday in preparation for Thanksgiving. But what I'm about to read to you, you can find at briansussman.com. That's BrianSussman.com. And it's an article entitled 3 Miracles Oh, three rarely told Thanksgiving miracles and dot, dot, dot. So let's get to the miracles first and foremost. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to look at my computer screen for those of you who are watching. For those of you who are listening, you don't know the difference. But first of all, miracle number one. It was November 1620. November 1620. And the Pilgrims ship, the Mayflower. Now let's talk about who these Pilgrims were. These were Brits who were escaping tyranny. These were devout British Christians who did not like having to worship under the banner of the Church of England. They thought that was blasphemous. And they wanted to come to a new world where they would be able to establish a community that loved God and a community that would live out the principles of love thy neighbor as thyself, and a community that would serve as a mission base to send like-minded Christians throughout the world to preach the gospel. That's who those Pilgrims were. So in 1620, the Pilgrims ship the Mayflower accidentally sailed right past a natural harbor in which they had originally planned to land. They sailed right by the natural harbor, never saw it. But this is the first miracle. You see, that was a good thing because hostile natives had seen the boat offshore. They assumed it was going to land in the natural harbor, and they planned on ambushing and killing the 102 passengers. Now, they may take a few prisoners, but they wanted to kill them, keep them from coming on their land, and take everything they were bringing with them. That was miracle number one. They missed the harbor. Okay, here's miracle number two. As they explored another harbor that was farther north, Plymouth Rock, they discovered a much better situation. There was a freshwater river teeming with fish. A large, flat, previously cleared 3-acre field for growing crops. I'll get into that in just a moment. But literally, it was a field that had been used in the past to grow crops. It just sat there waiting for somebody to plant something on it. A huge high hill, perfect for their cannon to ward off any enemies as well. So it was just a perfect ideal situation. A Native American tribe had previously developed the farmland, but the entire lot, every one of them, had succumbed to a very recent plague. And as a result, no native tribes wanted to do anything with the land because they thought it was cursed. Literally, every Native American that lived there, every Native Indian that lived on that property had died. And so the surrounding tribes said, we don't want to have anything to do with that land. It's poison. And by the way, the hill was perfect also for that tribe because they could see if any enemies were coming, because some of these tribes were quite hostile with one another. So that's your miracle number two. Now here's miracle number three. It's pretty cool stuff, isn't it? The first winter, this would be, because they arrived in the fall of 1620, so this is the first winter of 1620, 1621. It was horridly cold. I mention this because, well, I'll get into why I'm mentioning it, but I just want to add to this the fact that this was during a time known as the Little Ice Age. It was a long period of time where the entire globe, particularly the northern hemisphere, was locked in a miserably cold condition, the Little Ice Age. All of the warming that's taken place, you know, the global warmers will tell you, oh, temperature's risen 1.1 degrees Celsius since the Industrial Revolution. Well, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, you know, with machines, mechanization, lots of fuel being used, CO2 being pumped into the atmosphere artificially. the Industrial Revolution, where there have been since then billions of cars and billions of planes and billions of tractors and billions of machines and billions and billions and billions of people. It's warmed up 1.1 degrees Celsius. Okay, now think about this. All that mechanization, huge buildings, people everywhere, farm animals, and it's only risen 1 degree because of us? No, I'll tell you why it's risen 1 degree, because we came out of a little ice age where the temperatures were incredibly cold. But that's in the book. It's in Climate Cult. You'll get it in a more articulate fashion than I just mentioned it just now. But the Pilgrims were hardly prepared for this winter. And listen to this. Half of the Pilgrim community perished during that first winter. But this is incredible. There was an Indian named Samoset who shocked the Pilgrims by approaching them speaking broken English. So here's a native approaching them. They think, oh my gosh, who is he? He's a scout. We're dead. He starts speaking to them in English, and he's friendly. And with him was a guy named Squanto. And Squanto could speak perfect English. I get into this story in long detail, by the way, in Climategate. But together, Squanto and Samoset helped the settlers survive after the first winter. Now, again, everything I'm reading to you right now is at briansussman.com. Just go to the blog. As opposed to the North American settlers farther south in Jamestown, because, again, this was the establishment of a second America. The Pilgrims wanted nothing to do with slavery. The Pilgrims wanted to get along with their neighbor. They wanted to get along with the natives. These were good, hearty, spirit-filled people who loved God and loved humans. And they wanted to share the gospel with humans all over the world. Didn't matter what your skin color was. But to the south, hundreds of miles to the south, there was a community in Jamestown where they had a slogan, "Damn your soul, grow tobacco." See, slavery has never been a part of God's plan. Slavery's always existed, but it's never been a part of God's plan. That's the devil's plan. And in this other America to the south, the entire economy was built on slavery. Now, once those colonies united later to take on Great Britain, a compromise had to be made by the South. And a compromise had to be made by the North. Are we going to accept these people into our colony system if we want to join together? They're doing slavery. We don't like slavery. Slavery's out. God is in. A compromise was made. Okay, listen, we'll deal with the slavery thing later, okay? But right now it's about life, liberty, and property, the pursuit of happiness, and upholding the Ten Commandments. We'll deal with you guys later on this slavery issue. But right now we got to hang together or we will hang separately. So the Declaration of Independence was written, signed by those 56 men, many of them pastors, ministers, godly men, and a few others. But we did deal with the slavery issue. We did deal with the slavery issue less than 100 years later. And 600,000 people died as a result of that horrible war. And close to 1 million were left without arms and without legs. And it was awful. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible war. We paid the price for America's original sin. But as opposed to the North America, as opposed to the settlers farther south who had the slogan, "Damn your soul, grow tobacco," the Pilgrims at Plymouth Rock were peaceful, God-fearing folks who had wonderful relationships with their natives. I'm reading from my piece at briansussman.com. During that first Thanksgiving in November of 1621, because this was the Thanksgiving after the horrible winter where they'd lost so many people. So the first Thanksgiving was basically a year later. The surviving English families had experienced great hardship and obviously great loss. Nonetheless, they fellowshipped with deep appreciation for their Indian friends and thank God for all they had. And by the way, they got along famously with the Indians in that region for 2 generations. To those who foolishly contend America was not founded as a Christian nation and the founders were all slaveholders, let me just share 2 more facts. First, the original Mayflower Compact, agreed to by the folks who came across on the Mayflower, states this: "In the name of God, amen. We, whose names are underwritten, having taken for the glory of God the advancement of the Christian faith, a voyage to plant the very first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these presents, solemnly and mutually, in the presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic for a better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid." America, my friends, wasn't founded on wild capitalism supported by slavery. America was founded for the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith. That's what they were doing in Plymouth. That's what this country was founded upon. And God was pleased because we've been the most generous, charitable nation in the history of the world. And this United States of America, these United States of America have been an outpost for sending the gospel to the utter parts of the earth. And we have our original sin, and we have many other sins, including slavery, including abortion in this country. And for that, we should be judged. But God has given us another chance. It's just like Israel in the Old Testament. They would screw up. They'd turn their back on God. They'd even get involved in things like child sacrifice, just like we have in this country. It's called abortion. And God would turn their back on them, and they'd pay the price. But then they would repent, and God would have favor on them. Friends, this is a moment in time where God has welcomed us back into the fold, so to speak. We need to take advantage of this opportunity to share the good news with others. Benjamin Franklin. Well, let me continue here with my second point. There are some comments on slavery from a few of those who had eventually and officially found the United States of America. For your friends who say, oh, they were all slave owners, those signers of the Declaration. John Adams said this: slavery was a foul contagion in the human character. Gouverneur Morris, who wrote the preamble to the Constitution, said it is a laudable horror in the defiance of the most sacred laws of humanity. Ben Franklin said mankind are formed by the same almighty being, alike objects of his care and equally designed for the enjoyment of happiness. He said mankind are all formed by the same almighty being. Thomas Paine, one of the most persuasive voices for independence, called slavery an outrage against humanity and justice. Roger Sherman, he signed both the Declaration and the Constitution, he called slavery iniquitous. Now, listen, some of the signers did own slaves, but the vast majority did not. The same thing can be said of the signers of the Constitution, and the practice was abolished following that horrid civil war that saw over 600,000 Americans die. Sadly, yes, America's original sin and the effects thereof lingers today, with intolerance coming from a variety of sides. My wife and I last weekend were out of town, and we walked by a crazy homeless guy. And he yelled at my wife and said, "You're a racist. You're a racist. You wouldn't even look at me. You wouldn't even look at me." He was African American. And there was just a righteous indignation that rose up in me. And I knew some would say, well, that was very dangerous. You shouldn't have done that. I said, hey, stop. You don't even know my wife. And you don't know me. And you're wrong. She's the last person you would ever call a racist. Then he started going off on me, and I said, whoa, hold it. I took out my phone and found a picture. I said, take a look at this picture. This is my family. And he looked at the picture and he said, oh my God, that's a blended family. I said, yes, those are my sons, okay? You want to see my grandkids? There are no white grandkids in my family. He said, where'd you get those kids? I said, those are my sons. They were all adopted. I said, you owe me an apology, and you owe her an apology. And he spit something out, and I think he felt terrible. He was busted. And I pray to God that impacts this guy for the rest of his life. Because you know what? There are a lot of great people in this country who have done wonderful things in the name of Christ for people of all colors and all persuasions. So friends, let's count our blessings. Let's take advantage of the moment. Again, don't forget my book, Climate Cult, my blog, briansussman.com. God bless you and yours, and I'm praying your entire holiday season is just awesome. Thanks for joining me.